everyone. Thanks for getting yourselves in here at 6:30. Appreciate that. And Jocelyn, thank you for ringing the bell to make that happen. So my name's Bob Roach. I'm the Director of Education and Science Programs here. Happy to welcome all of you here, and I would certainly like to introduce our presenter. Before I do that, I do want to tell you about a couple of upcoming programs. First of all, you probably noticed while you were out there having your snacks and maybe a drink or two that we have a new exhibit called Whales Today. This lower section down here is known as the Biology and Behavior section. Upstairs at the top of the stairs is focusing on communication, and then in the Turner Gallery is the cultures of whaling. So think of it as what we know, and if you go upstairs, how we know it, and then in the other gallery, who's been learning it and knowing it since like 1,000 years ago or more. So definitely, if you have time, come back and check that out. Upcoming on the weekend of April 27th and 28th, the Biennial Whaling History Symposium. If you're interested in that, there are tickets available on the website or through the front desk. And actually, subtitle for that is Gaps in Analysis and New Perspectives on Whaling, World Cultures, and Contemporary Issues. So they will be diving into themes we have not discussed before. And also on Sunday, April 28th, later that day, because the Sunday, April 28th portion of the Whaling History Symposium ends at about noon. The New Bedford Whaling Museum will host a group of contemporary dancers from Tilted Collaborative Dance Project of Cambridge to interpret the newly installed exhibition, Whales Today, through improvisational movements. A couple of other things. If you haven't done so already, it'd be great if you either put your phones off or on vibrate or silent. And then Richard's book is available for sale or for purchase at the front desk. You can buy them through our front desk staff. When the presentation's over, Richard said he'll hang around and he'll sign your book if you'd like it signed. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. So Dr. Richard Connor received his BA in biology from UC Santa Cruz in 1982 and his PhD from the University of Michigan in 1990. Following postdoctoral stints at Harvard, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, the University of Michigan, and the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences, that's at Stanford University, he moved to UMass Dartmouth in 1996, where he is a professor of biology. He has authored more than 80 scientific articles on dolphin behavior and the evolution of cooperation and mutualism, co-edited the 2000-volume Cetacean Societies, and published 2 books, The Lives of Whales and Dolphins, that's with Don Micklethwaite-Peterson in 1994, and Dolphin Politics in Shark Bay, A Journey of Discovery, which you'll be hearing about momentarily. Dr. Connor's dolphin research has been featured in numerous print media, including the New York Times, and in television documentaries such as Nova and National Geographic Television. What's not on the bio is that Richard also has a keen interest in fine arts. So he combines arts and science just like we do, and he actually manages a personal collection for someone not too far away. So, he's not a one-act person, So anyway, with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Richard Connor.
Thank you, Bob. I have to thank Bob for helping lead my marine mammal students on tours each fall when I teach biology of marine mammals. And I'd like to thank the Whaling Museum for having me here tonight, and I'd like to thank all you folks for coming out to hear me talk about these amazing dolphins on the other side of the planet in a place called Shark Bay. So the question I'm often asked is, how did I develop an interest in dolphins? I'm not really sure. It goes back to my childhood, but sometime in my teens, I think that interest crystallized around the question of what they're doing with these big brains. So when you take body size into account, after humans, dolphins have the biggest brains on the planet. Brains are expensive, so what are they doing with them? I wanted to find out. I wanted to find a place where I could watch wild dolphins at close range. You're all familiar with how Jane Goodall famously habituated a group of chimpanzees at Gombe National Park in Tanzania to her presence, used bananas for a while to do that, so she could just watch them socialize with each other at close range. I wanted to find something like that with dolphins. It's a tall task because it's hard for a terrestrial mammal to watch an aquatic one. It's like this. In Shark Bay, Western Australia, where for decades several dolphins have been coming to a beach there to interact with people. And in this audience, people of a certain age might find this somewhat familiar. Coppertone commercial from the 60s, maybe. Okay, from a satellite view, Shark Bay is a huge feature. If we zoom in a little bit, it's 90 miles deep, 50 miles across, and it's bisected by the Perron Peninsula. And the Monkey Mine campground, where these dolphins come into the beach, is right here. Shark Bay, it's a marine biologist paradise. It's the largest seagrass beds in the world. And those seagrass beds support a lot of everything, not just dolphins, dugongs, sea turtles galore, fish, and as we'll see, sharks, aptly named. And Shark Bay is kind of separated from the Indian Ocean by submerged dunes and barrier islands, and so we don't get a lot of ocean swell. It's a windy place, but when the wind drops, it's a sheet of glass, and it's like you're floating around in a big aquarium, watching dolphins and other marine life. It's really spectacular. This is the beast. It's the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphin. It's a bit smaller than the ones you're familiar with along the east coast of the US. It's also, as you can see, more beautiful, and they're smarter and more elegant. A little bias there. All right. From an aerial view, this is Monkey Mine. This is the campground. This is the beach where the dolphins come in. And you can see why Monkey Mine is there. It's the only place on the east side of this peninsula where deeper water comes right into the shore there. So for decades, fishermen are launching boats there, and at some point they're probably tossing fish to the dolphins, and that's how the interaction got started. So in 1982, we learned about this place in 1981, 1982, shoestring budget, little grant from the New York Explorers Club, student loans that came late, sold my coin collection, went out there, hitchhiked up from Perth. We had, a hand-rolled black and white film, no boat. So we were pretty much confined right here to the beach watching these tame dolphins, which was pretty interesting. But for 2 days in October that year, when the bay was glass, we were able to borrow a little dinghy and go out, and our minds were blown. There were dolphins everywhere. We went from one group to another, and we learned that these several dolphins that came into Monkey Mine Beach to take fish from people were part of an enormous society of dolphins offshore. Dolphins that were completely tame and comfortable with our presence. We could sit there and watch them, socialize, feed, whatever they wanted to do. And that was a view from the boat with glassy calm day like that. Just amazing. And we learned early on that these dolphins have what's called a fission-fusion grouping pattern. That means groups, they're not all together in one big mob. Individuals come together, they split up, and they do that all day long, and it's very much like us. So if you think about your day to day, right, you've been changing social groups, coming together, splitting up with others. Well, the dolphin social life is very much like that. It's very dynamic. And this is how we identify them. The shapes and scars on their dorsal fins, which they conveniently pop up out of the water like little identification flags. They wave at us, I'm Charlie, I'm Sue, every time they take a breath. It allows us to study them in real time. It's fantastic. Now, the fins aren't stable all the time, they can change. So it still amazes me to this day that on those glassy calm days in 1982, 2 days, with that hand-rolled black and white film, I got a picture of real lunch. If there's a star in my book, it's this guy, master dolphin politician. He runs throughout the book. Clever guy. And there he is, 30 years later in 2012, this somewhat modified fin, got a little tiff here and there, right? Amazing. So out on our boats, on this incredible, beautiful outback to the sea, we can watch all kinds of dolphin behavior. We can watch them feed in all sorts of ways. Here this dolphin has just caught a fish. They catch a huge variety of fish, schooling fish, solitary fish. They chase fish along the surface, fish that are leaping. They probe along the seagrass beds for fish, redfish, bluefish, all kinds. But what's very interesting about our dolphins, and in fact, other dolphins and even marine mammals and sea otters, is the extent to which individuals kind of specialize in how they fish within populations. So particular individuals kind of specialize in different ways of getting fish, and that's very unusual for a terrestrial mammal. So at the top of the peninsula, where there's this steep beach, several of the dolphins do this hydroplaning behavior and strand feed in pursuit of fish. This has been filmed a lot in National Geographic and so on. It's very spectacular. And it's safe for them to do it there because, again, it's a steep beach and they can wriggle off if they get into trouble. But probably the most famous of the sort of foraging tactic specializations we see is this sponge carrying. You know, we first learned there was some dolphin out with a funny growth on its nose, and Rachel Smoker, who I first went out with, went out there a couple years later and saw this. You know, she thought it was a tumor, and then it didn't have it. You know, got a closer look and saw that it was a marine sponge. As you probably know, they're animals that look like plants. They're filter feeders, and they grow up from the seafloor. And these are cone-shaped sponges, and so the dolphins pluck them off from the seafloor, and they fit over their closed snout like a glove, held on by water pressure, and they swim around like that, and they go down to the bottom, and we think they use the sponge as a tool to protect their snouts when they're, poking around this abrasive bottom. It's a mostly female behavior. Some males do it, and it's learned from their moms, right? So it's kind of like a cultural thing here, passed along, and it's performed in the deeper channels. And it's actually, it's like the easiest thing to show somebody. If I have a visitor, it's a crappy day, I can just say, boom, out to the channel, there's a sponge carrier. So it's actually quite common. Yeah, I took this picture in 2010 or 11, and this is the original sponge mom, as we called her, one of the first spongers that we photographed in the mid-1980s. And here she is 25 years later, still doing her sponging thing out in the channel. Now, they often come together to socialize, rest in groups. This is one of the reasons you rest in groups, because Shark Bay, as I said, is aptly named. These seagrass beds support a lot of everything, including sharks and especially tiger sharks. So in 1994, I had a 19-year-old come on as an assistant named Mike Heithaus. He stayed on to do his PhD there. He's now the Dean of Marine Sciences at Florida International University. And for his PhD, one of the projects he did was lean over the bow and count shark bite scars on our dolphins. And he discovered that over 70% of the dolphins have been bitten at least once, sometimes more than once. So you know how people are always saying, hey, if there's dolphins around the water, you're safe? Not so sure. This is a very gentle shark bite, very gentle one. I don't want to, show you something unpleasant. So, okay, so this is a pup nursing from its mom. They'll nurse for 2 or 3 years. In a few cases, for older females, they may nurse for 7 to 8 years, and then it's kind of comical because the baby is about as big as the mother in that case, swimming alongside. So females typically give birth the first time when they're 12, after a 1-year gestation period, and males start engaging their adult alliance behavior around 13 to 15 years of age. And if they're lucky, they can live to be in their 40s. This female wasn't quite so lucky. But you can see she was old because look at all those speckles on her belly. Our dolphins start to get speckles around their genitals when they're about 8 to 9, and as they get older, those speckles spread and cover. So she was pretty old. Then we got a tooth, and you can slice it and stain it and count the rings like a tree. So she was about 35. This was a very famous dolphin named Holyfin, who came into the beach for decades and entertained hundreds of thousands of tourists. And then I showed up for a field season in 1995, and one of the rangers comes up to me and said, Holyfin's surfacing in a really odd fashion. So I went down there, and yes, she was. She was popping up to the surface like a cork. Newborn babies do this because they don't have well-developed musculature. They're little blubber balls, and they just pop to the surface. And seeing an old female do this, that couldn't be good. So she did that for a couple weeks, and then she didn't come in one day. And we knew she was gone. So we also knew that she'd sink, and the gases would accumulate, she'd refloat after a day. We waited a day, and we found her not far from Monkey Maya, as you see, probably having just come ashore. So we got her and took her back and had her shipped down to Perth for a necropsy. And we were stunned at the result that came in pretty quickly. A stingray spine had penetrated the left ventricle of her heart. So these spines are serrated. There was no sign of an external woundlet. So it had gotten into her, and just with her body movements, it had slowly migrated. And once it was inside her, its trajectory was clear and her fate was sealed. And she basically died of congestive heart failure, and essentially drowning, so it was very sad. And you know, the flags at half-mast at Monkey Mine for a while on that. So primates groom each other. You're probably familiar with that. They groom each other and touch each other like we do to form and maintain and repair social relationships after a tiff or a fight or an argument. So they do a lot of this. Well, dolphins pet each other with their flippers, and they do a lot of this. It's very important in maintaining their bonds, and the males do this a lot that I specialize in. Females also pet a lot, but they also have a special way they touch each other. So you'll see one female come up and just rest her unmoving flipper against the side of another, a little bit behind. And they'll surface like this, for like just a few surfacings to 20 minutes. And when they surface, it looks like they're just glued together. And they often do this when they're being harassed by obnoxious males. So I think it's like one female giving another support in a stressful situation. It's really fun to see. And then you see this, they'll be, play behavior, they'll get rowdy, they'll flop out all over each other, body-to-body contact. And here one male is mounting another male. So dolphins have lots of social sex, and they have incorporated sex as a social tool in the full range of social behavior, from when they're being aggressive to where they're being very friendly. It's just a social tool. And that's really unusual in terrestrial mammals. The closest might be the bonobo. Anybody know what a bonobo is? Yeah, so they're kind of chimpanzee. They're not like the common chimpanzee. They have a very different social organization. And I call them hippie chimps, because they're kind of a hip hair part in the middle. It's kind of long. They're a little mellower than normal chimps. They have a lot of social sex. So you can think of dolphins as aquatic bonobos. Well, maybe bonobos or terrestrial dolphins. Equal time here. So when I showed up, for my PhD research in the mid-'80s, I just wanted to do something, been a successful technique in primatology. I just wanted to go out and follow dolphins. And of course, for your PhD, you got to find something to specialize in. So I had my eyes open for the first interesting thing that emerged, and you'll see that was the male politics. But to understand what males are doing, you have to know what females are doing. Because females are doing all the work raising the babies. The males don't help at all. So the females sort of maximize their reproductive success in their life. They have to worry about getting enough food for themselves and their infants and protecting their infants. And so if I want to say, summarize females in Shark Bay, the key word here is variation. They vary enormously in the size of groups we see them and in their range sizes. So here we see all these shapes are the home ranges of individual females. And they vary by an order of magnitude. So in Red Cliff Bay, right near Monkey Maya, Joy's friend have a little home range of 7 square kilometers. Blip, all over the place, over 100 square kilometers. So hugely variable, and we think this variation relates to the different ways they get fish. So if you're a sponge carrier, you're out there in the channel, you're working all day to fill your belly, and you have to do this activity alone. So the sponges just tail out, dive on the bottom, and they're usually kind of frustrating to watch. But anyway, so they're alone, and when they do socialize, it's usually with another sponge carrier. A female like Blip, with this huge range, is probably focusing more on schooling fish, and these are big mobile patches of food. The dolphins will travel over larger areas to find them, and then they'll be in groups feeding, and then they'll be in groups socializing and resting. So she has much more of a social life. So in all this fission-fusion dynamic we were watching in the mid-'80s, we saw some very consistent associations between adult males. They travel around side by side in these pairs and trios, and some of them were really stable. So stable that we started calling out abbreviations for their names. So the trio of males, Trips, Bite, and Cetus, there's TBC. Chop, Bottom Hook, and Lambda, there's CBL. So this was a puzzle, obviously, because if males are simply competing for access to females in estrus, because only one male can sire a calf, then why are they together in these groups? They should simply be rivals. So that was our first question, and we found out that when a female's calf is about 2.5 years old, she starts cycling again, the males working in these pairs and trios will aggressively sequester her and keep her with them in these consortships that can last for minutes to weeks. And here we see 2 males flanking in behind a female there. There's the female in the middle there. Now, while this was going on offshore, we had 3 males coming in taking fish at the beach. Snubby, Sickle, and BB. They feature a lot in my book. They were real characters, and they were bringing in all of these females from out east where we didn't go much at the time. We didn't know. These females didn't want to be there. You know, they weren't used to hanging around the shallows with people in the water. And so they kept them in there aggressively. And here Snubby is guarding today, and Snubby's mainly also interested in when the fish buckets are coming down. So his attention's up there looking at fish buckets while he's trying to keep an eye on this female. And you'll see. There's also a vocalization called pops, which we discovered is a threat they use to keep the female close. Can you hear that? Turn this toward her a little bit, and back to the fish buckets. His priorities. Yeah. So here we are offshore with the pair, bottom hook and pointer, and they have a female with a calf, and she's hanging out by pointer here, and maybe bottom hook's not too happy about that. He's a bit away. And what you're going to see is bottom hook orients to them, and he produces a well-known threat. It's a vertical head jerk, and it's accompanied by a crack sound, and then he rushes at the female, making that pop vocalization. You hear this crack, you'll hear it. And he rushes up. Right, so we'll see these captures offshore where 2 or 3 males may capture a female in a group or a solitary, 2 males chasing the female there. And sometimes the female will try to get away from the males. And so we've just come upon this group here, and we've just sorted out they have the female clam, and you'll see what happens. That's her, clam, they've got clam. It's clam.
Wow. Wow, bolt, 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 bolt.
They can go. They can move. Wow.
She's going.
Yeah, they were. So at the same time we're sorting out the function of these associations of 2 or 3 males together, we're also noticing that each pair or trio of males was often seen in the company of another pair or trio of males. And again, if they're simply competing for access to ester females, they shouldn't be friends. And here you see, this is actually Trips by Cetus TBC, traveling with CBL, each of the trios side by side together. You see this synchrony, and often one male will be a little off, and we called him the odd male out. He wasn't as synchronous as the others, and he wasn't with them as much. And so here they are, glassy calm day, 3 males and 3 more. Now here comes Trips by Cetus, they're pretty synchronous. Chop bottom hook, land, ooh, bottom hook's a little off there. He's the odd male out. Right, and that was pretty consistent for them. Now, I always say that August 19th, 1987 was the most exciting day ever in the history of our project, because that is the day we discovered the function of these relationships between alliances. It's the day we discovered alliances of alliances, what we call second order alliances. And it was a perfect day. It was glassy calm. Snubby, Sickle, and BB were consorting with Holyfin in the shallows. They were really excited around her. They were displaying, and Trips and Bite of TBC fame came right into the shallows, which they'd never done before. And they approached within 4 meters of Snubby, Sickle, and BB with Holyfin. And we were excited. We think there's gonna be this big fight. We got cameras and video cameras ready, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. And then they leave. Yeah. But I think maybe the show isn't over. So I get in my boat, go offshore and find them a mile offshore, and they've joined up with Real Notch and High, who have the female munch already. Then the 2 alliances start moving back towards Monkey Mine together. And as they got closer and closer, the heart rate starts going up, because we have a inkling what's going to happen here. And they just charged right into the beach with the tourists there and the dolphins. The place exploded, fighting and chasing, right down the park, past the boats, through the mooring lines, emerging at the other end of the park. We catch up to them there. Yeah, we had a video camera with us that day, but it was the person's first time using a brand new camera, so it didn't work out so well. But I got a little clip here after they've just come off and we're realizing that Holyfin is with Trips Bite Cedars from Launching High. And I just want you to hear my reaction to this discovery. The first time we really saw this clearly.
So they got Holyfin, they went there and stole her.
Holyfin's in the middle of Trips Bite Cedars. We're not shouting much on these guys. I don't believe this.
This is like science fiction.
This is like science fiction. I want you to hold that remark because it was so mind-blowing what we saw this day. It was like too amazing to be real. I want to explain why. But before I do that, I want to show you another day where Snubby, Sickle, and BB were attacked by the same males, but this time they had their buddies Wave and Shade with them, and in this case the chasing and fighting lasted for 70 minutes and covered 5 miles. I'm just going to show a brief clip of the fighting here. And you know, when dolphins fight, yeah, they try to bite each other, but their real serious weapons are those flukes and those tail stalks, those peduncles. They're powerful. So what you're going to see mainly is the dolphins trying to avoid blows and deliver blows.
Watch out! Neutral! Get it?
I was afraid, you know, they're going to run into the motor. That's why I said hit neutral quickly, but fortunately they didn't. So we discovered these second-order alliances. And now, today, we know that we consider these second-order alliances to be the core male social unit in Shark Bay. They range in size from 4 to 14 males, and they can be stable for decades. And males seek out their first-order alliance partners, members of the pairs or trios, from within these second-order alliances. And some of them can be quite stable, as you saw with TBC and CBL, but in other cases, you know, after a consortship, males may switch partners. A lot of variation there. So going back to that science fiction comment, I just want to think about this, comparing them to chimpanzees. So here you have the 3 top-ranking males in a chimpanzee community. And males in a chimpanzee community cooperate to defend a community territory, right, against other males out there. But within the community, they compete to be the alpha male, the top-ranking male, who gets more access to estrus females. Unlike a lot of other mammals, they don't just do this, be the biggest, toughest guy who can fight the best. They use coalitions to do this. And they cultivate alliance and coalition partners using friendly behavior and all kinds of tactics that were captured beautifully in Franz de Waal's book, Chimpanzee Politics. And in fact, the title of my book is sort of a nod to his book. And so it's really complicated. It's a soap opera. And these males have to be really concerned about males from another community. Because if you're caught alone, out near the boundary of your territory, you can be killed by these neighboring males. They're dangerous. But imagine there's a third community there. And imagine that males from this community go over here and talk to these guys and groom them and say, hey, you know, let's get together. We can attack them and take their territory, and we'll have their fruit trees and their females, won't that be great? But imagine at the same time, males from this community are trying to negotiate the same business with these guys against these guys, right? You'd have the same kind of complex interactions between alliances that you have between individuals within a community, but you don't have that in chimpanzees. Their relationships between communities are purely hostile. It's simply us against them. But you do have that in humans. Multi-level, nested male alliances with complex interactions at all levels that in modern society we've extrapolated right on up to nation states, and you also have that in the dolphins, the pair and trio of dolphins together. So I knew the primate literature and what was going on there, so when I saw this, again, it was just mind-blowing, that you'd have some astonishing convergence in this complex nested alliance formation between humans and dolphins, the animals with the 2 biggest brains. And then we have this incredible synchrony that you've seen. They'll surface synchrony, dive synchronously, link synchronously. And there's one other species that uses this kind of synchrony in their alliances and coalitions, right? So we also see amazing synchronous displays that males perform around females. So yeah, they'll coerce the females into staying close during these consortships, but they may also need to impress them to increase the chance that they'll be the father of the offspring. Some synchronous displays are, we see them over and over, but others are one-offs. So in this case, you have, there's the female, 2 males performing synchronous belly slaps going in opposite directions. I think these are creative. I don't think they're going, oh, let's do number, 6C, and I think, so, I think they're creative with these, and it's amazing. We do know that dolphins are phenomenal at imitation. Here at Lou Herman's research site in Hawaii, they've simply given the dolphins the command, do what the human does. And you see pretty good facsimile, right? So they're better than almost any terrestrial mammal outside of humans at this kind of movement imitation. And they're also phenomenal at imitating in the vocal domain. So they can imitate sounds of each other, and even computer-generated sounds. So what you want to see here is a triple synchronous leap. 2 males coming towards you, 1 going away. I've slowed it down so you can see the 1 going away. It's a little jerky, but let's see. 2 coming at you. Yeah, impressive. And here is a more common one called a rooster strut, wave and shade, performing synchronous rooster struts. You'll see why we give it this name. Hey, it's funny to us, but it's very serious to them.
Side by side, synchronous rooster struts by shade and wave.
And it is beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's very impressive. I never get tired of seeing this kind of thing. And just to show you that not all displays are performed synchronously, I'm going to show you a solo display by the male Picante, who's a member of the Blues Brothers. So, we give all these second-order alliances names, right? So, usually based on some key male in the group that just, gives us a chance to have a humorous name. So, Primo is a group of 7, we named them the Prima Donnas. Croc was a member of a group of 14, Crocker Spaniels, were the Grand Poobahs, the Hooligans, the Blues Brothers, and so on. And each of these groups seem to have, that guy, some character who's just getting in trouble all the time, causing trouble, just larger than life kind of. And in the Crocker Spaniels, it's CB, and in the Blues Brothers, it's Picante with this rooster strut like none other I'd ever seen.
Toke 7 moves. Going. Got it. Still going. Conte. And this goes on.
He's impressed with himself, I'll tell you.
Wow. Yeah, I got him. That's great. Whoa.
A little flourish at the end. And now I'm going to take us a little bit into the creepy realm. We're out there with the wild crowd, a group of 14 males, lousy day, choppy, cloudy, and there are a couple of females with them, and they're really rowdy. And then I start hearing this what, kind of sounds like a group chant just before they attack somebody. If you listen closely.
How was that? Putting a finger between the behind 2458. Whoa, tense.
And boom, right? So, wow, we have a lot to learn about dolphin vocalizations. Good. So in the early 2000s, we decided to increase our study area up and down the east side of the peninsula to look at the overall pattern of alliance formation. And we ended up getting fantastic data of over 120 alliance-forming males. And you can't do that in any population of anything. It was amazing. And so each of these shapes, again, is the home range of a second-order alliance, 12 of them we studied, or a lone trio, which are typically older males who used to be in larger groups and have sort of disappeared. And if you'll notice, just like I showed you with the females, it's kind of a mosaic of overlapping ranges. There's not one male group or anything that covers the whole area. So this showed that these guys lived in an open society, which this was amazing because there's just nothing like it, again, on terra firma. So in terrestrial social mammals live in what we call closed or semi-closed groups. Think of a wolf pack, a baboon troop, a chimpanzee community. You're a member or you're not, right? Yes, individuals can change groups, but they have to go through a little hazing process. And within these groups, everybody knows everybody else, and they know their business, and they know their dominance relationships generally. And you don't pick on that little one because she has a big sister, right? So, but think about the situation for these dolphins. So they overlap with a lot of other dolphins they know really well, but way out at the edge of their range, maybe they don't get there very often, maybe they come across another male who they easily defeated 3 or 4 years ago, but maybe he's got more alliance partners now and they're not really sure. So I wonder about the uncertainty and how that makes their social lives even more complicated. It's fun to think about. And of course, nothing like this on terrestrial mammals, so it just confuses them. During this period, we also discovered a remarkable third level of alliance formation. So just like in the 1980s, we're seeing these pairs and trios hanging out together, wondering what they were doing. We started seeing second-order alliances spending time together, resting, traveling, socializing occasionally. So the 7-member prima donnas seemed to be friends with the 14-member Crocker Spaniels. And again, the function of this turned out to be identical. They were attacking other groups to steal their females or defend against such attacks. So I'm going to show you, these can be chaotic. You can have over 30 males chasing and fighting in all directions. And so Whitney Friedman was out there directing a boat, trying to keep track of all this chaos. And here you go.
Two that way.
There's arms to the side.
That direction. Okay, let's try and get groups if it's possible.
Wow.
Sorry. Okay, there's 2 really close together. It could be more on the path. Anything else?
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll follow that one.
These are Blues Brothers at the back here.
Okay.
The way you do this is you have like 2 cameras going at once on motor drive, and you're taking blanks in between cameras and groups, and you're trying to get 1,000 photographs, and you have to sort them out later with video and so on to figure out what happened. But an amazing situation. So given that the function of these second and third order alliances is identical, you can ask, why form a third level of alliance? I think it's an insurance policy. So when I describe these second-order alliances to people, 4 to 14 males together, I think people get the idea that they're always in their second-order alliances, moving around like billiard balls, bouncing off other alliances in the bay. And it truly is amazing when you see a second-order alliance of 14 all together with their consorted females and calves. You have over 20 animals. But they're often spread apart from each other. And so, if you have a female and your mates aren't close by in your second-order alliance, and you run into rivals, it behooves you probably to have other friends. And so I think that is why they form friendships with other groups. And we've seen situations where members of a second-order alliance are attacked that way, and members of a friendly second-order alliance come to help them. Okay, when we look at the habitat that we're working in here, up here it's pretty open, what we call deep water, 15, 16 meters. No, the rest of the world wouldn't call that deep water. And you go down here off Monkey Mine to the east, and it's really what we call subdivided habitat, with these really shallow banks. You can run ashore at really low tide, aground out there. And they have channels between them, very different kind of habitats. This turned out to be really important. Because, we were wondering, why are our dolphins so much more complex than other dolphins? The longest running study in Sarasota, Florida on bottlenose dolphins, they have male pairs, no trios, no second-order alliances, and no third-order alliances. I think it comes down to those seagrass beds. They just support a lot of dolphins, and it may be no more complicated than if you're going to run into your enemies, you better be with your friends, to explain why they have more complex alliance formation. But it's difficult to test these ideas because the animals are different in so many other ways. The Sarasota dolphins are much larger, the proportionally difference in size between females and males is different, and so on and so on. So how fortunate that we discovered variation right within our study area, in this huge social network. So in this subdivided area down here, you find more pairs combined with trios. You find the males don't actually consort females as much, and they don't have as many new sort of battle scars. You go up north, and they have more battle scars that are fresh. They consort females more, and they are really stuck on their trios. I think there's probably just a higher density of dolphins up here. As you go down in here, you get into super salty water. There's nothing going on at all. This might be sort of a marginal transition zone, right? But now we don't have these confounding variables like we have between Shark Bay and Sarasota, so we can start getting at these hypotheses. I think there's a higher density up here, but it may also have to do with how far sound travels in open water compared to the subdivided habitat down south. And the guys up north are so stuck on their trios. We were amazed when that 14-member WOW crowd we studied so much in the 90s, by 2009 they had shrunk down to just 8 animals. What does that mean? It means 2 trios and a pair. They had 2 pretty stable trios and a pair, but the pair didn't work together. You had Ajax over there foraging by himself at Cape Rose in 2009, and Myrtle off by himself, and Krill was part of a trio. Come back in 2010, Ajax by himself off Cape Rose, but now Myrtle's part of the trio and Krill's off by himself. Come back in 2011, Ajax still by himself over by Cape Rose, but now it's switched again, and Myrtle's by himself and Krill's part of the trio. And then toward the mating season that year, we go out there, there's 9 WOW crowd members in 3 trios, Ajax, Myrtle, and a demolished Finn are in a trio together. Who is this? Who's this stranger? Side by side synchronous with these guys. So, we get to work, and Whitney actually was able to match up a complex series of scratches on both sides of the fin. It was Sharky. Sharky, the last surviving member of a group called the Sharkies that overlapped for decades in their range to the WOW crowd. They were generally rivals, they knew each other. He was the last survivor. There was a vacancy in the WOW crowd. He moved in. It was like he'd been there his whole life. Synchronous consorting females. Just amazing. All right, I want to end this with giving you an incredible sneak preview of what I'm thinking is the most ambitious dolphin project ever in history, right? We're going to do in Shark Bay and take advantage of this astonishingly huge and complex society to learn as much as we can, again, about this huge brain. And I'm calling this the Dolphin Decade. So start next year if we can raise the $2 million we need for it, $200,000 to start. And what we want to do is map out the alliances of 150 to 200 males. And instead of doing like one project at a time sequentially, we want to look at them from all angles at once. Their behavior, their genetics, their ecology, the prey and the predators, and their communication. And first key part of this is team. We have an amazing team together now. So top left there, Michael Crutzen is the director of the Anthropology Institute at the University of Zurich, runs our genetics lab. Down here, Stephanie King, we just recruited a few years ago. She's just taken a position at the University of Bristol, one of the top dolphin communication people in the world. Simon Allen, who just this week published a really important paper, senior author, on the effects of this 2011 marine heat wave that impacted Shark Bay, really impacted our dolphins, and we hope we don't have any more of those. And he's also a population biologist and behavioral biologist. And then Mike Heithaus, that 19-year-old kid, I got started as an assistant in 1994, now the Dean of Marine Sciences. He runs a community ecology lab at FIU, and they've done a lot of work on all the other animals in Shark Bay, fish and so on. We'll need that component. So that will be absolutely amazing. But the thing I think is super driving this is the technology. So it really got me thinking to do this project, because in every sphere of our research, the technology has advanced to the point where we can answer questions we couldn't touch 10 years ago, right? So we can now localize sounds underwater. In the past, you put a hydrophone in the water, you hear the dolphins talking, but you don't know who's talking. Now we know who's talking. Drones, we can watch the behavior from above. I'm going to show you some cool drone clips in just a minute. All right, this little black box is a sort of a newfangled echo sounder with such an incredible resolution. It looks like you're watching a video of fish swimming underwater. We're going to be able to film, it's going to be like watch dolphins feeding in real time. We're going to map their habitat with ROVs. And the genetics has advanced so much. We can do a much more refined analysis of relatedness using what's called deep pedigrees. So in all spheres, it's just incredible what we can do now. I'm going to bring this all together on these 150 to 200 males. A little bit about what Stephanie King's doing. So she has this hydrophone array, and not only is she keeping track of the dolphin's behavior, but she's keeping track of their relationship to the boat in order to localize who is saying what. So you hear this, you're going to hear a dolphin whistle, and that's going to be key. Listen to the whistle, and then a little more aggressive behavior. There's the whistle. And then here's amazing. So here's how she does it. She's got 4 hydrophones, one in each corner of the boat. So the sound's going to arrive at different times, the hydrophones, and she can triangulate on that. So it's not this group of dolphins, it's not these dolphins, it's this dolphin that made that whistle, right? And so already she's published an important paper showing you the whistles. And these, what we've known for decades is that each dolphin has their own whistle. It's like their name. It's called a signature whistle. Right, and she's already, and these members of 3 different second-order alliances, Crocker Spaniels, Rascals, and Prima Donnas, there are their names shown on spectrograms. So imagine we can learn the names of all 150, 200 males. You know, sky is the limit with what we can do. So now a few video drone clips, amazing stuff. First time showing this stuff, just from last year. So here are 3 members of the 9-member hooligans petting each other. You just see how they petting and stroke each other, sort of affirming their alliance relationships. Okay, this, we didn't even see this from the boat. This only showed up in the drone footage. Gang of rowdy males charging along. Now, when males have a disagreement, they line up head to head and they shake their heads at each other up and down, they squawk at each other, we call it a tiff. And it may or may not escalate into a fight. So watching the drone footage, we saw the 2 of the males evidently had an issue. They dropped behind the group, they had a little tiff, and they didn't escalate, and they went synchronous and rejoined. So you'll see this here, they're just swimming along. And there they are, having a few words. You do too, I did not. And then they synchronize and go back into the group. Okay, this was incredible. So the Crocker Spaniels and Prima Donnas are friendly, but you know, they can still have issues. And this male, big midget bites, evidently has an issue with Dee, who's a member of the Crocker Spaniels. Big midget bites named after these nasty little bugs that bite us during June and July. Okay, here come the Crockers, and this is Dee petting with a friend. And I think he's nervous, I think he knows what's going to happen here. And you'll see him sort of slip onto the other side, like he's going to hide behind this other guy. Big isn't having any of it, he goes right at him, boom. And they chase Deet away, and everybody stays together with poor Deet. And we can see these incredible synchronous male displays from the drone. These are beautiful choreographed displays. We call these butterfly displays. And this is, can you see the dolphins over here? I can't see at this angle very well, but you have like a triangle around one in the center. So when males are out in deeper water, they have to spread out to forage alone, but they need to keep an eye on the female. And one way they do that is to keep her in the center of a triangle. And here they're just coming up after a dive, and you'll see this triangle start to close, her in the center. And how are they coordinating this? So one of the things we're going to learn in the Dolphin Decade. You know, how there has to be some kind of sound they're making, I think. And you're going to see the one male from the north, he's coming in, he's got to get back down to dive. Maybe he didn't catch any fish, you know, the last dive, so he won't get to get back down there. And the other 2 get behind the female, they'll come together and pet, spread out, and she'll dive, and they'll dive. And a little pet. Yeah, how you doing? I'm fine. Did you catch any? Yeah, I got one. And there they go. Opposite things. Isn't that amazing? All right, we've been at it for a long time. And so we've been helped by a lot of people. And here's a list of organizations and foundations that have funded us a lot. I want to, the New York Explorers Club gave us that first little grant. National Geographic I want to highlight because they've been there all along. Major support from the Australian Research Council, the Squish National Science Foundation, the Anne and Gordon Getty Foundation. The Monkey Mine Dolphin Resort has been amazing for a very long time, supporting us. For this big, ambitious project going forward, we established a 501c3 foundation, and we'll see how we go with that. And I think we've gone a long way. Found out a lot about what they're doing with these big brains, more than any other place in the world, really. And with this new technology, I think, again, we're going to blow it out of the water. There's so much we can learn. So with that, I will take your questions.
We have a microphone for questions, so we just ask that you wait if you have a question until the mic is in front of you. That way everybody gets to hear that question.
I have a question about the female. Does she get to choose which of the three to be the father of her child, or do they attack her? Is it the first one that attacks her? How does that
That's
happen?
a fantastic question. I wish we knew the answer. There's two kind of answers I can give, two approaches. The first is how equitably the males, say in a trio, share mating chances. And so over time, we're trying to build up the sample size of paternities. You have to do that genetically because of all the social sex. You can't use mating to see who the father is. And to see if males share paternities equally or not within an alliance. And the other question is how females might be choosing. They may be kind of costly for them to choose, given all the aggression, but in addition to sort of choosing by who they spend time with, there's another potential mechanism that's called internal or cryptic female choice. So if she mates with several males, she may have a way to favor a particular sperm. That's being studied in a lot of animals, obviously kind of hard for us to do that, but that could be a way that she's choosing who fathers her offspring. Mm-hmm.
So interesting, thank you. There's a lot of debate about dolphins in captivity, and two questions. How many are in captivity around the world at this point, and what's your feeling about that, please?
That's a good question too. I have no idea how many are in captivity. And obviously I think when they are, they need to be treated very well. And if I just think about bottlenose dolphins, there's again a lot of variation in how well they're looked after, and so that's really, really important. I'm not one of the people that thinks all dolphins should be out of captivity, because there's very important work on their communication and cognitive abilities that we have yet to do. If you think about when the first sort of get all dolphins out of captivity movement started back about 1970, if we had followed through and got them all out of captivity, there's so much we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know about that imitation. We wouldn't know about their ability to imitate sounds. Recently, Stephanie King just, again, had a paper from Florida Keys showing the dolphins have an amazing ability to cooperate with each other. So, there's these studies on cognition are going fast in all kinds of other species. And I think we need to keep pace with the dolphins. I think somebody could, harming dolphins in their habitat somewhere around the world could say, you say dolphins are smart, what's the proof? Chimps can do this, dogs can do that, parrots can do this, show me dolphins can do. And if they're all out of captivity, we wouldn't know. It's the kind of studies you can't do in the wild. So I think it's important that under the right conditions, we have some that can be, can study their cognitive abilities.
Do they have teeth like the whale?
Well, they have little cone-shaped teeth. Unlike us, we have all different kinds of teeth, like incisors and canines and molars. They just have one kind, little cone-shaped teeth that they love to rake each other with and make little scratches. But they don't, again, their jaws aren't that powerful, so that's not their main weapon. Their main weapon is, boom, that tail. Mm-hmm.
Do they use alliances to protect against predators like sharks?
That's a great question, and we don't know. There is safety in numbers, why animals form groups quite generally. Just being in a group without any cooperation reduces your chance of being captured by a predator. Beyond that, if they cooperate, I don't know. They may. But again, it's amazing to me that in all the thousands of hours we've spent watching them and all the shark bite scars, we've never seen a shark bite a dolphin. And what it shows you is that really important events in the animals' lives, are pretty rare. So although we spend a lot of time watching them, it's a tiny fraction of their lives. And it gets me also, that we watch them carrying on all the social behavior. It blows me away to think of, we're only with them a little bit of time, and they're just carrying on like that all the time. It makes me tired to think about it.
I have two questions, if I may. The first being about, it seems in all, at least the clips that you've shown, it's a preponderance of males with a solo female. At what point are the females no longer childbearing, and then are they just kind of relegated off to the older females by themselves? My other question is just related to local. There were a ton of juvenile white-sided dolphins in Cape Cod Bay this summer, which was unique for us. And I wondered if you knew of that and had any comments about why that was.
I didn't know about that. There've been some unusual occurrences, like that big mass stranding of common dolphins a few years back. And so, there's a lot of information coming out about, changing resources out there, movement of fish populations, lobster populations. So, things are changing. So, I don't know. And your other question was about the females.
There seemed to be a preponderance of males, because obviously that's what you were studying, but where are all the other females? Are they no longer childbearing and therefore they're off and on their own?
The females are there, and they're in about equal numbers, but if you think about it, females are only going to come into estrus every several years. And so the other females are kind of out of circulation. The males are just the ones that are in estrus. So you might have equal numbers, but the ratio of males to females, when you consider just females in a given year that are in estrus, is going to be very male biased. And that may play an important role in why males are cooperating in 2 and 3 to be with the females. So, but the females our females continue to reproduce throughout their life. They're not like killer whales, for example, which have a menopause like humans, where they stop reproducing at age 36 or so, but may live decades beyond that, and they become grandmas. Our dolphins continue to reproduce.
As I look at the two brains of the human and the dolphin, it appears that the cerebellum is much larger in the dolphin. Am I correct? And what do you think that means?
I don't know. They have huge cerebellum, and their brains are organized very differently. It's a long, separate evolutionary history. The blood supply is very different. The arrangement and kind of cortex they have is completely different. There's a long history of anatomists looking at their brains and the way they're structured and saying, oh, it's like a hedgehog or something. And they don't have the right sort of evolutionary perspective to think about it. Big brains are metabolically expensive, so you've got to be doing something with it. And I think what we're seeing, it's a long history in primatology of thinking that really big brains were driven by complex social interactions. So your reproductive success is determined how well you negotiate those social relationships. The need to cooperate with the same individuals you're in reproductive competition with. And if you think about us, we spend most of our time thinking about our complex social lives, not other stuff. So, and I think the exciting thing we found, we go out and look at these dolphins, we have no prior knowledge what to expect, and what do we find? Astonishingly complex social lives. And you were talking about these white-sided dolphins. The cool thing about Shark Bay is that they are sort of made for our brains, right? Think about it. They're in these little groups, they move pretty slowly, we can watch them, we can learn about them inshore, and you'll go offshore and find huge schools of common dolphins and white-sided dolphins, but it's very hard for us to figure them out. So we have this special place in Shark Bay where this really complex society is right there for our brains to do. We can handle it. We can look at them and learn. We got to get this microphone.
Dolphins versus porpoises, are they the same? Are they cousins, or what's the difference?
Well, if you go back, fishermen used to call them all porpoises, including the dolphins. But technically, the porpoise family is just several species like the harbor porpoise and these probably, unfortunately, soon to be extinct vaquita, which is down in the Gulf of California. And then there's 30-some species of dolphins in the dolphin family, right? So the porpoise family is actually most closely related to another family that includes the narwhal and the beluga. And then they're related next to the dolphin family. And I can't keep track of how many dolphin species there are. They're always changing their ideas on that. It's 30-something.
We have time for 2 more questions.
You have a question?
I've always been fascinated by the synchronized dancing that they do. It's like they're putting on a show for us. And who choreographs that? It's just amazing.
It is a great question, and I suspect, I mean, when they're just surfacing synchronously, it can be, they just sort of entrain on each other like we do in music, but I think some of these more complex synchronous displays, it's probably going to be something more like follow the leader. So Lou Herman trained in captivity, and this is another reason, you know, you can do these studies in captivity around the wild. He trained dolphins to think of their own new trick. Right? They're repeating a study that had been done in the 60s. So on command, perform a behavior that you've not been conditioned to perform. He also had trained them to perform trained behaviors synchronously. And he got the bright idea to marry the 2 commands, and he gave the dolphins a command, perform a new behavior synchronously. And they had a bunch of new synchronous behaviors that were produced. And the most bizarre one he described to me was the dolphins kind of circled a little bit and then leapt straight up into the air. On the apex of their leaps, they spat water out of their mouths.
Our final question.
You said the dolphins, they have like lots of babies. Do they just leave the babies behind after they produce?
That's a great question. Well, the babies stay with their mothers a few years and nurse from them, and then after that it varies. So the female babies grow up as juveniles and adults and typically continue to socialize with their moms and other females. The males go off and start hanging out with other males to, you know, do their alliance thing. But, you know, they still share their home range with their mothers, so they run into her once in a while. But they have sort of different trajectories after they finish nursing from mom.
Well, thank you very much to Dr. Richard Connor. His book is still on sale at our front desk if you're interested in purchasing that, and he did agree, as Bob mentioned at the beginning, to sign some copies. He's also down here to answer the rest of the questions if you're interested in hanging out for a little bit. Thank you.